All right, welcome to another episode of the Business Academy podcast. Ethan Daimber here, joined once again with our partner in crime, Quentin Terpstra. And today I think the conversation's really focused around if you really want to scale and grow your practice and not have to do everything yourself, you got to have key people in your team that are doing important things on your behalf and running major parts of your business on your behalf. And a big part of that is having a really trusted, productive, and effective office manager. And I think it's important that we clarify their role and what does that mean? What is an office manager? What should they be doing? And what does this person's day-to-day look like? And I think we've seen about every different version you could think of what an office manager does.
Sure.
But I think we should talk about that because I think it's a struggle where doctors don't know how to define what that role is. It's just the next person that started helping them in the beginning.
Well, and I think the first thing is we've got to determine what is manager. Mm-hmm. And to get into what is manager, we got to look at what does manage mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Frankly, there's a lot of doctors that don't even manage their staff. And nobody really manages the staff. And nobody truly does running the office.
Or they manage it when there's a fire or a problem. That's when they manage it, is when there's a major blow up or an issue.
Well, to my point, nobody's managing the office because there's fires, right?
Right.
And that's kind of like the way that things go.
Yeah.
And so when you look at that, a chiropractor, and I love chiropractors, they went to school, they learned how to be a doctor. They learned how to be a clinician. Nobody ever taught them how to run the business.
Right.
And what does that look like? And then, in order to truly run a business, there's so many different hats. There's the hat of the entity itself, that it's set up, that it will continue to remain legal, that the taxes are paid, that the insurance is paid, that the office is there, right? There's the hats of how do you drive in new patients?
Yeah.
There's how do you get a great patient experience that goes along with that once you bring the people in.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's the treatment that's going to go along with that. But as a manager, you've also got to be looking at, do I make any money on this treatment, or am I still doing a $50 adjustment when my salaries have gone to $20, $25 for every front desk person?
No kidding.
And and then insurance is paying me so little here and whatever. And so while we're definitely going to go into what is that office manager, I think if we go back to that point of, as a practice owner, a doctor's really got to understand what is the management of my practice look like before they can even give that to anybody to take on that hat and that role as a manager underneath the doctor.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think if we really work it backwards into into your point, like what is management, what does it mean to manage, and what are you managing? I was just on the phone with a doc a little bit ago, and it just reminded me that the office manager role is going to be defined either way. You're going to define it by being proactive and defining the role in the most effective way possible to grow the company and to manage and to lead the team, or it will define itself, right? But it's going to be defined either way. And I noticed there's a lot of the definition of an office manager is just the person that started doing the work that I couldn't manage myself, so they're doing it now.
Yeah.
Right? Because I was growing and I have to give that work to them, and they're just taking over all the back end stuff I don't have time for. And then the role gets defined that way, and all of a sudden the office manager is managing tasks. They're managing day-to-day tasks to run the business and to grow it and just to keep the chaos moving forward. And so I guess at a bare minimum level, an office manager could be managing tasks, I suppose, but there's no way you're going to grow if that's what their job is. And they're just trying to play whack-a-mole and just kind of manage the fires and play firefighter and manage the billing tasks and the front desk tasks and manage the hiring tasks and manage this problem went wrong with that patient task. They're just going to eventually get what we hear a lot, I think, from office managers that are struggling too, which is I'm overwhelmed, I'm burnt out, I'm stressed.
Sure.
And there's never enough time to finish everything. And then what happens, this is when it gets really bad, and I think you've heard this before too, is like, then the office manager starts saying, I don't want to grow. Because every practice owner who watches this wants to grow their practice in some way, more new patients, more revenue. They need to figure out how they're going to create more profit because labor costs are going up and inflation's going up. And the office manager is so overwhelmed by doing all these tasks and they're taking it all in. They just go, if the office grows, that means my workload grows and I can't even barely manage the one I have. And so they're not managing people. They're not leading a team. They're not managing policies and procedures. They're not managing a business and patients and the patient experience. They're just managing stuff. And it's not even getting managed at that point. And that's where I find a lot of office management, quote unquote, at in the state of chiropractic. And then offices get stuck at 150 visits a week, 200 visits a week, and everyone's overwhelmed and stressed, and there's just a lot of chaos and fires.
Right.
And that's where we have to start. Like, that's going back to the word manage, like that, to your point. That's how most offices are office managing. But I think it's more than that. I think managing a business and then office managing a team is more than just playing whack-a-mole, being a firefighter, and just handling the overwhelming amount of tasks that are there every day.
Well, an office starts off with a person, typically a chiropractor or a business owner.
Yeah.
And we've got people that own chiropractic offices or integrated practices that are not a chiropractor, but it started with that person.
Yeah.
And then as that extends out to other people, we've helped thousands of offices to become a staff-driven practice. And by that meaning that we've got people that can, take on those different roles and, run those different things. And, in order to do that, we've got to then have properly delineated roles, responsibilities, with a statistic that you can gauge how much of that role or responsibility or duty did they get done, and how does that compare with an earlier time of what that was. Mm-hmm. And then to manage that, we have to then monitor what those things are, look at how much work somebody is doing. Are they, is their plate actually full? Or is it just that the guy next to them is doing a horrible job and giving this person 3 times as much work as what they should be doing, right? Bad employees there.
Yeah.
You've got, the roles of hiring new staff, training new staff, getting them really doing their job properly.
Yeah.
And recommending for the offloading or firing of people who are not doing those roles properly.
Yeah, and it reminds me too, I think going back to that initial stage, a lot of office managers were onboarded into that role because in many cases they were promoted into that role because they were really good, they were loyal, they were on purpose, they would do anything for the practice, and they were really good at the role that they were. Maybe they were a really good front office manager, or they're a great chiropractic assistant, or they're really good, in the billing department. And they hold these technician roles where they thrived, did well, and it was providing a lot of value for the practice owner. And so the next obvious decision is, well, I think you're kind of the office manager because you're managing this really well, so can you manage some more things? And then it turns into a technician just technicianing more things.
Right.
And then you go, oh, we have a couple more staff we're going to bring on board now, and they don't know how to manage people and how to lead a team and how to like you said, find the right people and onboard them correctly and train them right and make sure they have a statistic and their performance is measured and they can help and troubleshoot and work with them and, have roles and responsibilities documented and organized and all these things that go along with managing an effective business and a team. They just go on technicianing more things, right? And also, I would argue that the most practice owners put them in that role as they're really, really good at their job, or 2 roles. They cross-train in multiple areas, and they're very loyal to the business and the practice. And they also were probably good at solving problems. Patient has an upset, they solved it. There's a billing issue, they solved it. There was someone with a schedule, you know what, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to solve it. And so they can also become really good problem solvers, which is a great quality. And so as you add more patients and you add more staff and you add more responsibilities in a team, this person has years of a habit of just solving problems on their own, doing tasks on their own. So they inevitably, and this is what I've noticed a lot too, they will, there's a term I coined a while back, which is like office managers mother henning all the work.
Sure.
And so maybe the office manager knows how to do everything, and they start saying things like, oh, if it's going to get done, I got to do it myself. Or if it's going to be done right, I got to do it. And that's a loop I've heard. Doesn't matter the state, the office type, doesn't matter if it's chiropractic, if it's physical medicine, if it's a medically integrated practice, neuropathy clinic, that's the same language that just gets repeated almost like just on a loop.
And that right there is killing expansion.
Yeah.
Because that person doing all of those roles themselves and not getting others to do it is not a manager.
Right. They're just an overwhelmed doer.
They are. And that person, if they will not change that, if they will not take in the training that you give them and realize that there's something wrong with that and aspire to do more and to get others doing those different things, that person does not deserve to be the office manager. You know, I'm not saying you're going to take them off the role immediately if you haven't already trained them, given them procedures, given them systems to do, get all the rest of that. But if that person just remains in that and just remains, having to be the doer, then somebody else has to be the office manager.
It's going to stop growth. It's 100% going to stop. It's going to hold stats down for sure, because you just literally physically and logistically can't do it anymore because this person is unintentionally holding everything down because they're trying to just kind of do it all themselves.
Yep.
And then it's interesting. I've seen a lot of times where team members in offices are really like, I'm like, why is this person doing more? Maybe it's a case manager, someone who's dealing with day ones or day twos, or it's a CA, a lean CA in the back. And I go, this person has a lot of ability and a lot of capability. They're kind of just not giving it. And I realize I just look long enough and I go, oh, I see how this works. You start doing something and the office manager kind of goes, oh no, I'll take care of it. It's fine. They start doing something, I'll take care of it. It's okay. Don't worry about it. And the office manager starts to just take on everybody's job, and it almost it doesn't almost, it literally disempowers other team members. So while this person's working 300% of their workload, most of the staff are at like 60%, 70%, because they know somebody else will take care of it if I don't do it, or if there's a problem, and they'll just go and grab it. And that's very damaging to a company, because this creates a bottleneck. And then to your point, you do that for long enough, and office manager gets overwhelmed, and they start saying things like, I don't even want to focus on growth right now because we're already busy enough as it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then that kind of mentality is going to kill the practice.
Absolutely. And a manager who does that is going to get rid of good staff from the practice.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you give somebody a function and you give them a duty and you give them what they're supposed to do in that practice, that person needs to go and do it. And that person will make mistakes. We all do.
Yep.
If a manager can't let somebody learn and make mistakes, you will never expand. And you'll never get anywhere with that. And so then that function of what's going on with that, now the person is saying, well, I don't think they really need me. It's true. Practice doesn't need you. And they might be a great performer.
Yeah.
But you don't need them because somebody else is going along to do this. And so that's where you lose great staff, is by not putting that in and going, you know what? These are your functions. These are your duties. This is all of it. This is how that goes. Here's the training. Here's all the run with it. Originate things. Do more that goes along with that. And now you'll bring that person up as a great team member.
Yeah.
which a good manager will foster that in people.
Yeah.
And a bad manager has to have has to be the one that's being acknowledged all the time for doing these great things and for putting out the fire and having to handle this and having to handle that, be the one that's coming in to save the day and so forth. That's a horrible manager.
Yeah, that's a good point because, it works in the short term. It works for that day, but it kills growth long term. One thing I was going to say too, I've run into office managers, and again, I think we're spelling out the story. I think of what most practices struggle with or have struggled with, and we'll go into what would an office manager do. And this is a case in your practice, so what do we do moving forward, which I think we can go into as well. But the thing I noticed is that there are office managers that are really, because they're really good at, say, task management and the spreadsheets and the billing, and they're just the paperwork and the compliance, and they're good with that, right? And they handle it and they manage it, which is great. It's not a full office manager job description, but fine, they're doing it. They don't, they get really frustrated with people. They have a short circuit with people. They short circuit with people. They have a short fuse, I should say, with people. They're not patient with people. So the idea of managing, leading, training, guiding, getting another person successful is like a chore for them.
Sure.
And they don't want to have to deal with this. And it's just kind of like, and they start saying things like, people aren't just what they used to be, and why can't anybody do their jobs anymore? And they just start blaming people, but they don't. I mean, sometimes I have to go, well, did you do a morning huddle with them? Have you trained them recently? When was the last time you were in a meeting with them? Where's their policies and procedures that you put together for them that you want them to follow? Where is that documented? Does that person know what it means to be successful in their job, right? Or are they running off a statistic? Do they have goals? Do you know what some of their personal aspirations are? Do you even know who this person is? Like, these are questions I ask that manager, and it's usually the answer to it is not necessarily. It's just too exhausting to do all that, and I shouldn't have to. I should be able to hire people when they do their job. I go, that's true. You should be able to hire people when they just do their job, but if you don't give them the resources, guidance, and direction, they're just going to be a minimally productive version of what you want them to be. And that's fine if you want your office to be minimally productive and just kind of staying the same and just kind of putting along. Yeah, then it works. But I don't think that anyone listening to this wants that type of practice. They want growth. They want profitability. We want production. We want serving patients at the highest level. We want great clinical outcomes. We want lots of new patients. We want growth. We want expansion. So that kind of, I think, mentality towards working with people just is not suitable for an office manager if they're going to have a team that's going to be successful.
Right.
So I think that's how to work with people, how to communicate and connect with people like you would with patients. It's very much a big part of the role as well.
And one thing that you touched on a little earlier was cross-training.
Yeah.
And I get asked this question a lot. But, well, I want everybody to be trained on everything.
Sure.
Training and duties and functions are two different things.
Correct.
Is there anything wrong with cross-training? Absolutely not. You should cross-train, and the more people you have trained to do the more functions, the better. Who knows? Somebody could, have an emergency and they're out. Somebody else needs to step in for that role. That's fine. Training. A manager trains his staff, and a good manager will continue to train people on their role and the surrounding roles. Because if an employee can understand not only their role, but knows what are the roles of the other people there, that employee will increase efficiency in the practice by sending that function or that duty or that patient to the right person and not to the wrong person, because they know the role and they know who's responsible for what and all those things go in there.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's training that goes in there, and training is vital. Look, most offices don't even train every week.
I know they don't have, and they say they don't have time to. Oh, I don't have time to train every week.
Right.
And that's the reason why you need to train every week.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then, one quote that I love is, the only thing worse than training somebody and losing that person is not training that person and having them stay.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
because like, of course you're going to continue to do everything yourself on and on and on.
Yeah.
If you don't do that. But that's the training aspect. So now you get to, well, roles and responsibilities. Now, in a small office, maybe everybody does everything. But when everybody is responsible for all the functions, then nobody is responsible for any of the functions. Right? And when one person is responsible for that function and does that, and that's their duty, and that's what they're going to go about doing with that, now that person is to hold down the confusion, live or die by that function and that duty. And something goes wrong with that area, well, it's on that person. And by putting that there and putting those different people in place, now you can have a manager that can truly see, okay, this person's responsible for this division and these functions and these duties, and as all outlined here, and this person is responsible for these ones. And that's how that goes. And now we put those onto the organizing board,
Right.
which is 7 divisions and 7 different, things laid out as to go with that. And now you've got a manager that can oversee those different things. One of the things that we teach that is so important is that one person should never have more than 5 directly answerable to them.
Yes, that's actually a really, really, really good quote from and it's like a whole part of our executive training system we have that discusses that. I'll tell you something that we've seen a lot, and maybe this applies to some offices listening and maybe not to others, but where you have a chiropractic office, let's say, or a small private clinic, and it is the doctor, this kind of pseudo office manager, and maybe one CA or one team member, or 2 maybe, and they're doing decent, they're putting along, figuring it out. Then they want to, advance and kind of rechange the office and add medical services to it, or integrate new service centers, which are going to require a host of new employees. You got to bring on a medical practitioner, you got to bring on a rehab tech, you got to bring on another biller, you got to bring on a second front desk, you got to do all these things, and you got to all of a sudden,
and you've got to pay for all the marketing for all those,
and you got to service all the marketing and this new payroll, and all of a sudden expenses go up. But you go, you know what? I'm adding these services, so my top line should go up as well. Thus, my bottom line goes up. That's the expectation. But we've seen a lot of docs that now have, say, 13 employees, and they did this within 6 months or 9 months, from going from 4 employees to 12 employees, and it's a mess. It's a complete and utter mess. And yeah, maybe they're seeing more top line revenue, more income's going up a little bit or to a degree, but the expenses are high, and there's just more confusion. Because now, going to this 5-to-1 ratio you're talking about, now you got 1 person or 1.5 people managing 12 people. And these new roles that are somewhat defined, but there's a lot of change happening, and it's just kind of all mixed up. And then you just kind of have this mess, and it adds stress, it adds overwhelm, and it adds burnout. And then it hits that ceiling. You can't grow anymore because there's just so much cope with the day-to-day chaos, right? And so, yeah, 5-to-1 is huge. And I find a lot of office managers will try to handle everybody and everything. And that turns into total mayhem. I mean, you have 4 young boys, right? I mean, you're just about there. I mean, if you guys were to have, let's say, we have some docs that have 8 or 9 kids, right? And you can kind of see the hierarchy. It's like mom and dad, big sister, big sister is managing kind of, she's like the go-between for the younger kids. And then big brother over here is the go-between for these ones. And you kind of almost have like an organizing board or a hierarchy of management in the family just by default. Because if it's just one parent and all these kids, it's just going to be complete and utter overwhelm. So you kind of see this natural, almost organizing board happening in a large family.
Yep.
It's the same happens for a practice. If you don't keep it at that ratio, it just gets, the system will break. It's too overwhelming.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And to your point is, yeah, I mean, we had 4 boys in 5.5 years. So there's no manager in that.
Yeah.
But you're right. I see others that have, an older sibling that's going to take care of that. And maybe they've got 8, 9 kids, and it's not as common these days as what it was, 50 years ago. But that's kind of how that would set up.
I want to give another example too, if I can as well. So that's a good example. But even if you look at, like, for those that watch, college football, they watch the NFL and they watch football, there's 42 or 52 man roster.
Yeah.
Right? Absolutely impossible to have one coach managing 52 people.
Right.
So what do they set up? They set up an offensive coordinator, a defensive coordinator, a quarterback's coach, a linebacker's coach. They got the team scout. If you look at how a professional or collegiate, football team, American football team is put together, you have a lot of management. So you don't have any more than like 4 or 5 players per lead or per manager or per coordinator or coach, or whatever it might be. So you can organize a really effective team. And to your previous point of cross training, I mean, is it important that a tight end can block and receive and run with the ball? Of course it is, right? He should be cross-trained in all these things and be effective at all of them. But he's still the tight end.
Yep.
He is responsible for that role. Sometimes in a trick play, a quarterback will play a different role for that once-in-a-lifetime moment. But he is still the quarterback. The running back is... And does the running back block sometimes? Sure. But he is the running back. That is his... If you had every player playing every position and everyone's cross-trained, which you want, but no one has a role... and then you don't have great management, it's just going to be, you're going to have a low-performing team because it's going to be unorganized.
Sure.
And I think the same applies for a practice. Yes, have everyone as cross-trained as possible so everyone can fill in when they can and have a better understanding of the practice. But I do see offices failing in that everyone's doing everything.
Right.
And instead of, like you said, everyone has a specific role and understands other roles, but they have a specific role, responsibility, and outcome they're responsible for.
Right.
And then you never have more than, 5 employees or 4 people per lead or per manager to lead and guide, train, onboard, make sure they're getting results, following the system, and moving forward from there. So I think if it's okay with you, I'd like to now we've kind of shown, I think, what the average office looks like in the average small business, where a lot of office managers struggle. So what does an office manager do, right? I would say first and foremost, an office manager does need, there's the minimally, and this is the case for most already, but they need to know how to do the roles they're managing beneath them. So if an office manager is going to be overseeing the front desk, overseeing an insurance biller, overseeing HR and staff onboarding, they're going to be overseeing different parts of the clinic, maybe the chiropractic assistants or day 1s or day 2s. They should be very familiar with those roles and responsibilities themselves, not because they're going to be doing it all the time, but they need to be competent in that. And that way, when they're managing somebody else, they know how to train somebody.
Sure.
They know how to manage them, work with them, troubleshoot them. Nothing worse than having a manager who has no idea what they're doing. And when you have a problem in your job, you go to them and they go, all right, just do that thing. And they don't know what they're talking about. So that's number one. I think number 2 is a manager trains. I mean, that's a part of the job that often gets overlooked. It's like a convenience, more of a requirement. Mm-hmm. And training requires, like, you're training all the time. You're practicing, you're drilling, you're providing more clarity. You are, working out kinks, you're practicing it again, you're working through the lines. I mean, it's a constant conversation. It's not just a part of the 90-day onboarding for, a couple hours because they read the book or they read the protocols on it. It's like a constant conversation. So group training, one-on-one training, all of our most successful offices, like you said, do weekly training, right? One-on-one, departmentally, or as an entire team. They're managing and they're leading the people. I mean, the people that are beneath them, they are helping them, they're guiding them, they're providing them the direction. If they're struggling, they can help troubleshoot and figure out what's going on. They have a rapport with their team. They care about their team, while at the same time having your back as a practice owner and having the organization front of mind at all times. They're also the ones that are proposing and creating policies, procedures. They're seeing and then giving it to you as a doctor, like, this is how we want to move forward with this protocol. They document it, send it to the doctor for approval. They're solving problems. They are, I think one of the main things they're doing is, and this isn't talked about enough, they're getting production from their team. So their team, they have a statistic, they have quotas and goals, they have expectations, they're ensuring and following through that their team is getting it done. People will take the path of least resistance if given the choice. A manager is there to get the team to do the hard things, to prioritize what needs to get done, to get the best results with production at the end of the day. Production of new patients, production and units of service delivered, production of day 2s, conversions, production of adjustments, treatments, across the board. They are 100% responsible for doing that and then reporting to you as a practice owner, where production is at, what are the numbers looking like, and here's the expectations and solutions to get there, and here's how our team's going to get it done. An office manager spends a lot of their time doing these top priority leadership management skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, an office manager gets others to get the job done.
Correct.
All of those things, I think, come into, what are the pieces of that? But an office manager gets others to get the job done.
Correct.
And, we train doctors as an executive, as a manager, and then we train office managers, and our best offices have both the doctor and the office manager who have both been trained on the system, on the management side of those things, so that the doctor is not jumping in and taking away that office manager's hat, and really knows what his owner hat is. And an office manager really has that hat of getting others to get the job done. And that's the winning formula.
So important. And kind of closing loop on your original point, we listed all these things of what it takes to manage a business, manage a team, get this thing growing. And it's like, you have to train your office manager on how to be a manager. Well, most docs watch this like, well, no one even trained me how to be a good executive, like you're saying, how to manage my business. And so the great thing with the Business Academy, all the things we've laid out today, these are systematically part of our training protocols and training programs that we have. I mean, it's like getting an MBA in business. Besides, we're not going to teach you a bunch of theory on, how to do a corporate acquisition. No, we're going to tell you brass tacks, day to day, how to effectively lead your team and have systems to manage your business and manage your team.
And our clients tell us that they never got those exact brass tacks, and where we're different is we actually train.
Yeah.
And then, in fact, we've had MBAs come in and do one of our training courses and say, I learned more in that 2-3 days worth than they learned in their entire MBA.
That's the exciting part. It's real world stuff. I mean, it's real world stuff that's going to be applying and solving problems right now. And so if you have an office manager who's in technician mode, in overwhelm mode, taking on too much and, struggling, but wants to get better and is coachable and wants to change and improve, then the Business Academy executive training programs for not just the practice owners, but also for office managers are key. And that's what, again, like I said, all of our biggest practices where the doctor's on vacation 4 or 5 times a year while their 3 clinics are running seamlessly and growing, it's because they have really great, of course, clinicians in there that are on board and serving patients. But just as equally as important, they have really great managers and leaders operating the business, growing the practice, and leading a team.
Yeah. And we're also teaching a lot on that at our upcoming workshops.
Yep.
In our training program and in our Business Academy program that, anybody that's listening to this can contact us, contact me, get that information, and we can absolutely help them out with.
So, I mean, if they want to come to one of our, practice growth workshops that we have coming up, or attend a webinar, or learn more, kind of dive deeper into this. I know you're really working front lines with practice owners all the time. And what's the best way for them to engage in that beyond, say, this podcast, if they want to get their office manager into one of those workshops or something?
Give us a call. Give us a call. We have the number right there. Reach out to us. And there's a nominal fee. You come to a workshop, check that out. You'll get so much out of that you can decide how much more you want to do with us.
Beautiful. Well, I think Quentin said it best. Good office manager is getting others to get the work done. And at the end of the day, a great office manager can help you grow the practice, and they should make your life easier, not harder. And as a result, we can serve more people in our community and scale and grow as big as we want. Thank you guys for listening and being a part of this week's podcast. It was great. And I hope you guys can put this into practice right away. Send this to your office manager, have them listen to it as well, and hopefully we all can win as a result. Until next time, we'll see you on the next podcast. Take care for now.